Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP leagues, even daily fantasy football leagues. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jeff Malinoff, and with me, once again, is the returning Mark Souza.
The man, the myth, the Mark Souza. He's back. He's back. At Mark Hella Gets It on Twitter.
Don't third person yourself.
I already know what you're going to say. I know. Go ahead. Go ahead, talk about it. Go ahead. Bask in your glory.
Talk about what?
Just tell everybody what you want to say.
You mean the fact that we had our final fantasy football matchup?
We're not done, by the way. We still have a couple more weeks.
You want to do playoffs?
Hell yeah.
All right, our final regular season matchup for 50 push-ups. Can you say the scores of our individual players we drafted?
You won by like 0.1. It was like...
Well, you're supposed to wait till the end to say that, but okay, way to spoil that. But I'll say...
I had Mahomes... This is from Week 16 in the NFL, so not this last Sunday, but last week, the week before. I had Mahomes, Elliott, Hopkins, Kelsey, Chubb. They got me 86.8. You had Darnold, Carson, Julio, Ebron, and Marlon Mack, and you got 87. So you won by 0.2. I lied. Not 0.1, but 0.2... It wasn't a good week for us. It was one of our lower scoring weeks, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Usually one of us...
None of us picked Nick Foles, who threw for 471 yards.
Our quarterbacks that we picked were good. It was everyone else. You had Carson, who did good, but really other than that, other than our quarterbacks and one of your running backs, we had some dud performers, some guys that underwhelmed. Hopkins had 16. Elliott had 13. Jones had 10. Ebron had 4. Mack had 10. Chubb had 14. So either guys that hit their projection, but nobody really went off other than Carson for you. But I was happy to see that because while Carson was doing that for you, Carson was helping me win my championship, my undefeated season. I finally did it, folks.
You did it.
I had an undefeated fantasy season. So I will happily do the 25 or the 50 push-ups because of Carson's 25 points. His 25 points carried me to win.
You did it. You did it. Hurry. Now go do it.
So I just want everybody to know that even though I lost, I won. All right? And I'll be back. So
He's
I'll go
doing
ahead.
his 50 push-ups.
Jeff, go ahead and carry the show while I do this. It probably could take me 2 ticks. I don't think I can do 50 straight.
All right. No worries. So, yes. He's doing his 50 push-ups. I won. I said Sam Darnold will have a good game in Week 16. I was correct. He had multiple touchdowns. Yeah, by like a couple points. But anyways, on tap today, we're going to be talking about some of the best performers of this entire year. We're going to do this year in review for this fantasy football. We had an unexpected 50-touchdown season from a certain somebody that we'll get into a little bit later. We'll also talk about some duds in our breakout performers. But honestly, looking at this year in total, it's been a very great year. There's been a lot of excellent players that didn't live up or didn't stay consistently well, like Ryan Fitzpatrick for one, or Jameis Winston. He had a couple of solid games. But there's also unexpected turns like James Conner. We'll obviously talk about him later. Marlon Mack was an unexpected, really good running back. And of course, there has been some backups that played at the end of the season that played extremely well. Nick Mullins, for one. Maybe not in Week 17, but before then, definitely. Also, how many was that? He just stood up. How many was that?
No, I did 50. I stopped in the middle.
Okay.
I did 30 then.
Well, I was talking about backup quarterbacks that played well. Nick Mullins and Nick Foles for one. Just the Nick brothers.
The Knicks.
The Knicks. Not the New York ones. These guys actually score points.
These guys actually do better.
Yeah.
I'm out of breath.
Are you all right?
I'm good.
Should we give you a second?
Nope.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
So our year in review. How are we going to? How do you want to start this year in review?
Just players that stood out. I'll go first. A guy who helped me, playing in a few different leagues. But one player that I drafted really late. In fact, he was my last round pick for my undefeated team. Emmanuel Sanders.
He
got hurt, but before that, he was a top 5 receiver in the NFL in fantasy football production.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible, right? I mean, he's a good player, but he was kind of forgotten about.
Yes, he was forgotten about.
Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Case Keenum. We really didn't know how that whole dynamic was going to work. New quarterback. When a new quarterback comes in, it's always weird for a receiver, right? So, he really stood out for me. What about you?
Yes, he did play well with the new quarterback in Case Keenum and all. I do agree with that. But I think more the fact is the Broncos kind of underwhelmed. They were expected. They were expected to do a lot better.
There's another player on that team though that was probably undrafted who ended up being one of the top 6 or 7 running backs.
Do you mean Philip Lindsay?
I do. I think we need to give him credit because that guy was phenomenal.
One of the best running backs in the NFL, fantasy football wise, I would say.
I picked Royce Freeman in the middle rounds of a couple of my drafts, thinking he was going to be the guy. He killed it at Oregon. The Broncos had a running back vacancy. Royce Freeman was a guy who caught the ball, ran the ball with power. He could do it all. But little unknown Philip Lindsay comes out of nowhere, steals the job away, and he ran away with it, pun intended. So,
nice.
Yeah. So we got to give him props. It's funny because the Broncos had a very disappointing season. In fact, they just fired their coach today in real life.
In real life?
IRL.
Okay, I don't. It doesn't make sense. You say in real life.
Well,
I guess fantasy. How you said that sounds like it's like everything is fake and nothing is real. Like we're in the Matrix. Wait, are we in the Matrix?
Yes.
Wow. Wait, what's the?
I don't know, man.
The Inception noise. Dun.
So, what other players stood out to you as we do a kind of our season in review?
There was a player on a team that is a very high draft pick and had a very good offensive-minded coach, but didn't get the wins, and that's George Kittle.
Big time, out of nowhere. What was he, a 5th-round pick in last year's draft, I believe? So usually you have a sophomore slump. Yes. Not him. He had a sophomore breakout. He
has broken the all-time receiving yards record for a tight end in one season.
Yeah, if you pick George Kittle, and he was the guy that was trying to get.
He is obviously going to be a top tight end pick in
he'll be top
draft.
3 next year.
For sure.
Top 3. I think it'll go.
I think he might be going the first. He might be number
Kelsey's
one.
Kelsey's going to go 1. I know he's going to go 1. He's on a better offense, and Kelsey is as good as Kittle is, he didn't match the touchdowns that Kelsey has, and Kelsey's more of a red zone threat. But Kittle will be high. But although, will Kittle be over Ertz? Ertz had broke a record this year too. He had most receptions in a season by a tight end. It's definitely maybe the year of the tight end this year, even though there's only a few.
Eric Ebron even had a great season touchdown wise.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Kittle. Anybody else?
Tight end wise or just in player in general wise?
Say that again.
Player wise or tight end? Any player?
Any player.
Well, I think there's an elephant in the room.
Who's that?
I don't know, 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards.
Oh, Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone expected that.
He wasn't, I don't think, a top 10, 12 quarterback taken. I know that some people took him late. I actually took him in one league with my last pick or one of my last picks.
Well, you got lucky.
I did.
Because
he will definitely be the first quarterback taken next year. I can almost assure that will happen.
He had one of the best years of any quarterback ever. Only 3 players have scored 50 or more touchdown passes, And those two are Peyton Manning and Tom frickin' Brady.
Mm-hmm. You want to know who had a quiet, good year in fantasy football that people aren't talking about?
Who?
Matt Ryan. Do you know that he almost had the same stats as his MVP year? Almost the same exact. His team did not do nearly as well.
I don't know. Yeah, that was one of the best offenses of all time as well, some people consider.
But it's just crazy because... So what year was his MVP year? 2016, right?
Yes.
He had 4,900 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 picks. You want to know what he did this year? 4,900 yards, 35 touchdowns, 3 picks. Everything the same, but 3 touchdowns less.
And less picks.
Same. 30. It was 35 to 7, 38 to 7. So he had 3 less touchdowns this year.
Oh, I thought you said 3 picks.
Three less touchdowns, but the same. He had 20 less passing yards, 3 less touchdowns, but everything else stayed the same. That's a really good season for a fantasy quarterback.
Yes, it is. But you know who? It was because Mahomes and Drew Brees had such much more better seasons overall. I think that's just what took it to the next level for them. Just a shadow Matt Ryan.
Brees kind of slowed down a little bit, but I mean,
Mahomes didn't.
Yeah, Brees had less fantasy points than Ryan, and he had 1,000 less yards, which is kind of crazy. He only had 3,900 yards, which is the lowest in Drew Brees' career since 2005.
So I think
isn't that nuts?
That is nuts because this was supposedly an MVP year for Brees.
He could still win it. I don't think he will.
I think Mahomes is taking it.
He could still win it though.
50 touchdowns and
but people
and 5,000. No,
but he will have the bias in his favor, right?
Oh, 100%. But you can't ignore 50 touchdowns.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. But
the last time 2 others made 50 touchdowns, they got MVPs. So It's only fair.
So back to other players who stood out. What about Chris Carson? I thought had a really
he had a pretty decent year.
Very quiet, but he's gotten better and better.
The Seahawks were pretty quiet in general.
That's true. He stayed healthy. They drafted a running back in the first round, so everybody was really concerned. Some people drafted Rashad Penny over Chris Carson because when you draft a first-round running back, they usually perform very well. Mm-hmm. But Carson came back from a broken leg, pretty devastating injury last year.
Yeah.
And, man, that guy can run. He can run hard. He runs really hard. It was nice to see him back. And he really has a stranglehold on that job. As we approach season number 2, I got to ask you, though. Mm-hmm. Do you think that he'll get drafted later than he should next year because of Rashad Penny? Because they drafted a running back in the first round?
I would... Yeah, I could see that, but I think some people also look at statistics more than anything else, like a lot of fantasy owners do. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be also a factor in him being drafted kind of high. I wouldn't say in the top. I wouldn't say the first 2 rounds, but I can see 3.
Mm-hmm.
Is 3 a good number? Good round
for Carson, round 3.
Is that too high?
I think we'll just see how it goes. It's one of those that in like training camp and in like preseason next year, you're going to keep an eye on, you know, like you're just going to want to gauge how much of the market share is Rashad Penny going to eat from Chris Carson. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
because you don't want to draft a running back in the 3rd round that is going to play 50-50 or like 60-40. Like you're actually drafting you're trying to draft like a guy who you know is going to be on the field for like most of the time.
Okay.
And with the Seahawks, they do like to rotate players. We saw Mike Davis, Chris Carson, and Rashad Penny. The good thing about drafting the Seahawks running back is they love to run the ball. They really love to run the ball. They're one of the few teams that still love to run the ball, you know?
Yeah, a lot of teams are on the air now, but there's very few that rely on the ground.
Sometimes you get a first-string fantasy running back, but a team doesn't run the ball that much, so it's like, okay, well, he's in all the time, but like he's not getting the ball as much as somebody who isn't in all the time, but when he's in, he's getting the ball. So,
yeah, definitely.
James Conner, breakout player. I know that he struggled the last couple of weeks with injuries, and I know that
they've been riding him so much, he's been broken.
Yeah. but a great year because a lot of people picked him like handcuffing Le'Veon Bell, right? Like a lot of people didn't pick him like, oh, he's going to be good. They picked him
No one
like
thought he was going to play.
they picked James Conner in a worst case scenario. And the worst case ended up actually being pretty good.
That was a roster fill spot. It was like that's like your final.
Yeah,
pick.
you
like,
picked him one of the last picks.
Yeah, that's like
You're
I
like,
need,
oh,
I need
a
one more
handcuff.
person. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by the toe. If you holler, let me go. My mother picks the very best one, and you are it. James Conner. I picked James Conner. That's what happened.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what about some duds? Let's talk about some duds this year. Some guys that just...
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, big time.
He was probably a first quarterback taken for some. Not the first one, but I think some
Tom Brady was a dud?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Because he's still one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks taken every year, so...
It's his name now, not his play.
So Brady, Kirk Cousins. I kind of feel like even Big Ben was a dud.
Yeah,
because he usually has some big games. Like
he sometimes has those 450
yes,
games.
and like 4 or 5 touchdown passes. And I feel like
he didn't have any of those. Did he?
I feel like it was a thing where when Big Ben was at home, he would be a lock for like 400 yards and like 3 touchdowns. Like it was a thing. And this year it wasn't a thing.
Do you know who? This is really not fair because he got injured, but Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, he was. I mean, yeah,
he was drafted high because of how he played,
Injury.
how he finished last season.
Yeah,
it's not fair to say he's a dud because of his injury, but it's still like that cost a lot of people some high
Jerick
draft
McKinnon
picks.
too was a pick that was in the 2nd or 3rd round pick, and he got injured. I know that some people drafted him before he got injured, and some people drafted him. Some people had their drafts after he was injured because he was injured in the preseason. But that's another one. Just it's funny because Kittle has this great
Would you
year.
say like I don't know if you agree with this one, but I know that John Gruden loves to run the ball.
Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and he was a dud even before he got hurt.
Yes.
Jordy Nelson too. The Raiders' offense was just a dud.
He had a couple
Amari Cooper was a
games.
dud until he got traded. So
Yes.
the Raiders' offense, except for Jared Cook, I think Jared
Any
Cook did pretty
defenses
good.
that were duds to you?
Well, Jacksonville for sure because
Yeah.
they were the first defense take. Minnesota and Jacksonville both were duds because
And because of Ndamukong Suh being picked up by the Rams, they were like middle of the pack.
they had a
were
couple
average.
good games where they
But
had big games.
You look at the rankings for the running and passing; it's like 16th and 15th, and it's just average. When you think it should be like 5th.
for sure. Defenses though, those two stick out. Minnesota and Jacksonville.
Oh, 100%.
Jacksonville. I think
especially.
Jacksonville had. I don't know if they had the record
Jalen
for most
Ramsey
fantasy
cannot
points last
say-
year, but they had one of the best defensive fantasy seasons of all time.
Jalen Ramsey has lost the right to talk trash for at least one season.
They didn't get the thing about them, which was weird, is that they didn't get a lot of sacks. Last year they were Saxonville, right? They led the league in sacks. This year they were middle of the pack. They weren't
That's being generous.
overly dynamic.
That's being really generous.
Anyways, other duds for me, Rob Gronkowski. Big dud. He had one game over 100 yards. I think he scored 4 touchdowns on the season.
I feel like his career is done, personally.
He's a guy, and I think we'll talk about him later on as we do a trending topic. But yeah, I still think he was drafted as the number 1 tight end this year. Maybe
Probably.
1 or 2. He's for sure. He for sure had a season where he was relatively healthy. I mean, he played. I think he maybe missed 1 or 2 games, but for the most part, this is as healthy as he gets for, in terms of participation because he played in almost every game. But any other duds for you?
It's a good question.
I mean, obviously Le'Veon Bell was the biggest dud because people still drafted him.
He was
thinking
first
he was gonna
overall
come back.
taken in some drafts.
Yeah, his average ADP was like 1.9, which means that he was mostly a number 1 pick or a number 2 pick.
That's not fair to say, though. That's not fair to say a dud because...
Well, I mean, if you drafted him, you probably didn't win anything. Like in your
Oh, you probably were in dead last.
You probably, yes, exactly. Everybody who took Le'Veon Bell in all of my leagues finished in the bottom 2 or 3.
You know who
Everyone.
was drafted high that some people... I saw Mike Evans in high draft picks, and he had a subpar season.
Which is weird because the Buccaneers' offense was actually very good fantasy-wise.
They had
It
a
might
lot of
have been
yards.
terrible real-life-wise.
He just was not in the end zone a lot.
Yeah, he didn't. They spread it around a lot. Humphreys and Godwin and Deshaun Jackson, they all kind of had like a piece. Even the tight end O.J. Howard before he got hurt, Cameron Brate.
Speaking of Howards, Jason Howard, Bears running back.
Jordan Howard,
Excuse me. Did I say
yes,
Jason?
he was a
I meant
dud.
Jordan
Howard was a dud, but Tariq Cohen was a stud, which was interesting.
Oh, wait, major stud. Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, Barkley was a beast, but I think we all expected that, right? He was a consensus first-round pick.
2,000 scrimmage yards. I don't think anyone expected that much progress.
But I mean, we kind of thought he would be a baller, right? Like, I wish. If there's one thing I regret about this fantasy season, I had 4 teams and I didn't have any of Saquon Barkley, and I tried to get him first in all of my drafts. I tried to give him my first pick, every single one, and I did. Somebody picked him right before me. I was like, oh, they'll pick these players over him. Nope. Everybody caught wind of it too. I guess everybody saw him at Penn State like I did. I think we all did, right? He was like an ESPN highlight reel all season.
And fun fact, the most fantasy points ever by a player in one season was LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006, 481 points.
What did Gurley get this year? He was up there.
Probably in the 300s, I would guess.
Yeah. Anyways, we got to go to break. Before we do, what would it look like if we all just, I don't know, listened more? Listening to audiobooks inspires us, motivates us, and even brings us closer. And there's no better place to listen than with Audible. Audible has the largest selection of audiobooks on the planet. And now Audible members get more than ever before. Each month they get 3 free titles of their choice, 1 audiobook, 2 Audible originals, and fitness programs that they can't get anywhere else. There's never been a better time to experience Audible. Try it free for 30 days, and this is all you have to do. Visit audible.com/GSMC book. That's GSMC book. Or you don't even have to do that. You can text 500-500. That's the number, 500-500. Text the word GSMC book, and you will get your free 30-day trial. So do it now. We'll be right back.
What happens to your decision-making when you drink? Well, after one drink, you feel confident. A few more, and calling your ex at 1 a.m. seems like a great idea. And you're pretty sure the secret to a great taco is 4-day-old macaroni. The bottom line, drunk you doesn't make great decisions. So you're risking a DUI or worse if you count on him to get you home. Plan before you party. Get home safe. Brought to you by Washington Target Zero.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We just talked about our duds and studs, I guess, for the whole season. Now let's think about the future, our next season.
You want to talk about the future because we're about to enter 2019? I see what you're doing here, dude.
I wasn't even thinking about that. So.
You think you're being sly, but I caught on to it.
Okay. Anyways, let's think about next season. Let's think about the future. Let's think about who will be a breakout next season. Who will improve from this season
Maybe
to
we
next
should talk
season.
about quarterbacks first. You want to start off with the rookies this year? Maybe who we see, I don't know, being a potential breakout, like Baker Mayfield. Where do you think he
Baker
goes?
Mayfield did break the record for most rookie touchdowns in a season, passing-wise. At least.
So do you think that he will be one of the top 7 quarterbacks taken next year? 7.
I think it depends on who the head coach will be.
Okay. That's fair.
If it's an offensive-minded passing-first coach, then I would say absolutely. But
That's
if it's
fair.
like a defensive-minded coach, who knows where that will be, though. It's all about the coach.
Would you say, though, as of right now, that he'll be the highest quarterback taken of the rookie quarterbacks this year in fantasy football for next year?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. What about Darnold? What if the Jets hire Mike McCarthy and they also get a wide receiver?
Possibly, but honestly, Josh Allen looks more breakout ready for me than Darnold does.
That's an interesting conversation. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. They both
only one rookie's in the playoffs, huh?
But they both got a bunch of points with their legs rather than their arm. Do you think that they can carry that on, or do you think they're just a big injury risk waiting to happen?
I think Lamar Jackson's more of an injury risk waiting to happen than Josh Allen is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see that going. But I also see a potential I just see like Josh Allen just being a better passer than Lamar Jackson is. I think Lamar Jackson relies too much on his running, and that's going to cost him.
Yeah, I would be very concerned about drafting Lamar Jackson next year as you probably don't draft him as your first quarterback. He's probably a guy you pick later on, and if he's still available, to take a flyer on him, kind of like how people did with Patrick Mahomes this year, where like they took him, but normally most of the people that took Mahomes this year took somebody else before. Yeah, they already had like a Rodgers or a Brady or something like that.
That was nobody's first. That was if that was their first person, that would be that.
If they did, I mean, hats off to them. That's awesome insight and like trusting. No, that's trusting your judgment.
I'm sorry, that's complete luck. Get out.
Yeah, no, I mean it is. It is, but I
have to be honest on that one.
Mm-hmm. So I would be concerned with both of them, though. I know what you're saying. Lamar Jackson has more designed runs, so he's taking more shots, whereas Josh Allen is more of a scrambler runner, like a Russell Wilson kind of.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they can duplicate that. I would be concerned if you think that one of those two will be a top 5, top 6 quarterback. You might be disappointed. But do you know that Josh Allen completed the month of December as the number 1 ranked quarterback in fantasy football? Did you know that?
Did he now?
Yeah. Isn't that nuts?
That is pretty bonkers.
So what about running backs? Potential breakout running backs for next year. Who this year didn't necessarily put up the biggest numbers, or I don't know, is a slam dunk top 1 or top 2 round draft pick next year that you think could be a breakout player?
I'll let you go first on this one. I think you have someone in mind.
This is kind of a cop out for me, but I think Jerick McKinnon will be a player because he's in that style of offense. We saw Breida, we saw Jeff Wilson Jr., we saw the 49ers running backs put up a lot of fantasy points. Jerick McKinnon, assuming that he can come back fully from a torn ACL, which he should, because he's going to have a whole year to recover. Remember, he got hurt before the season started. He's already back. He's already working out. Like he should be fully healthy in that offense. I mean, he was a top 2 or top 3 round player before he got hurt, and then he got hurt. So I think that is an obvious breakout player.
All right. So you're saying guys that got injured or were
maybe,
not playing this
for
season?
Various reasons. Yeah, maybe they were in the doghouse by the coaching staff.
Le'Veon Bell.
Yes, Le'Veon Bell.
That might be a cop out, but I think he's gonna come back stronger than ever. He played 1 season off a break. Now he's completely healthy. He should be good to go. He'll be on a team that he likes to be on. They'll obviously, if he gets signed to another team, they are gonna put the entire offense around Le'Veon Bell. Can we agree to that?
Mm-hmm. I think he'll end up being on the Raiders, to be honest with you.
Wow, the Raiders.
Well, they have the most money, I believe. They're one of the teams that has the most money. And John Gruden likes to run the ball, so I can see them making that a priority maybe a little bit more than others.
I believe every team's going to make at least an offer.
He's going to be too rich for a lot of teams.
Give me 5 teams that will offer him something.
So the thing is that I expect that he'll get a deal probably similar to Gurley's, and Gurley's was $15 million a year. He was 4 years, $60 million with $45 guaranteed. I think Bell will get something like that, maybe a little bit more. And that prices out a lot of teams. Not a lot of teams are going to spend $15 million or can spend $15 million on a running back this year. It would be, and obviously teams like Dallas, teams like the Saints. There's a lot of teams that have running backs right now that they're just like, nope, we're good, we're set here. So I would say maybe 5 to 7 teams are going to be serious about Le'Veon, that have the money and have the need.
Name them.
Oakland for sure.
Okay.
Well, they're Oakland as of now, but the Raiders.
Las Vegas or London or L.A. or Santa Clara Raiders.
I could see the Texans making a run at Le'Veon Bell. They
need a running back. True.
I don't know what they're. I think they do have a little bit of room, but they might need to be creative. The Jets.
That was one of the favorites.
Jacksonville, especially if Leonard Fournette is out, because we're hearing rumors now that Leonard Fournette's out.
And they voided his guarantee
and
contract.
Carlos Hyde was only on a 1-year contract, so he's a free agent too. They could actually have the ability to sign Le'Veon Bell.
They might be cheap and just re-sign Hyde, but I can see them going for Bell.
Plus, they're a team that likes to run the ball, and they don't really have a quarterback right now. That's another position that. So if they can get a running game like
they're
going to
look for a quarterback for a running back.
Yeah, they could do both this offseason. So
I guess.
So there's 3 or 4 teams right there. Let's do.
Well, there's one team that he wants to play for, supposedly.
Who's that?
Indianapolis.
But with Marlon Mack, I could see them being like, no, we're pretty good.
True, but
Mack's had a breakout year.
Bell showed interest in Indianapolis this season.
That's true. What about Philadelphia? That's an interesting place.
They have Jay Ajayi returning from injury.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big possibility.
I mean, they'd have to shuffle around some things for sure.
But Bell would want to get way more carries than like half the carries.
What about I think LaShawn McCoy is a free agent, so what about Buffalo?
They don't have the money.
I'm not sure. I have no idea, to be honest with you. But those are some teams. I think that's a good start.
I think he also wants to go to a kind of a big market, and Buffalo's probably the smallest market out of all of them.
Well, I think he's going to go where whoever pays him the most. I mean, if he's sat out because of money, I think like the highest bidder will be where he goes. If I had to guess, I don't know. But maybe if there's a tie,
so like
maybe if
LA
two teams offer the same amount.
Get it?
Yeah, I got it. Maybe if two teams offer the same amount, then that comes into play. Like, okay, maybe I don't want to go to Buffalo. I'd rather go to Philadelphia or something like that. I don't know. All right, so other players.
I would. Well, I was about to say one more thing. I would say I would put an LA team in the mix, but they don't need one. Neither of them do.
I think Melvin Gordon's actually a free agent.
I think he's going to resign. I don't.
It's interesting though.
Yeah,
it's interesting. All right. So what about like any wide receivers that potential breakout candidates for next year? What about a guy like, I don't know, Calvin Ridley? He had a decent year and then he kind of disappeared for a while. I wonder if his sophomore season will be more of a breakout type.
Maybe. But I don't know. That's a coin flip for me personally.
Wide receivers are very hard to gauge.
Especially like Julio Jones this year was like, get a touchdown already.
I honestly thought Corey Davis was going to be a breakout star this year.
Stop catching for 150 yards and not getting a touchdown.
Corey Davis was the guy I was all about this year, and he did not perform, and I kind of blame that on his quarterback. I really do.
Blaine Gabbert was his quarterback at one point.
Yeah, and Mariota even. Mariota is very underwhelming as a starter, especially for fantasy football. For fantasy football, Mariota's not the quarterback that you want throwing the ball to your receiver. He's just not. You want somebody who's going to sling it in there. You want somebody like a Big Ben, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes, somebody who's going to throw the ball down the field to very athletic and fast receivers like Corey Davis. So any other receiver that you can think of that might have a comeback year or like a breakout season next year?
AJ Green?
I really like, possibly. I really like the kid from Carolina, DJ Moore. If Cam Newton can come back, DJ Moore is electric. He led all receivers this year in run after catch yards. So he can make plays with the ball in his hand. He's super quick. They liked getting him the ball in running situations as well as passing situations. But that relies on Cam Newton. If Cam Newton can't be healthy next year or can't come back...
He might not play next season.
I mean, I don't know if that's a doubt.
Well, he might... Well, depending on how serious the surgery is, I would assume there was going to be some issues there. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming he's getting surgery.
Yeah, probably. He's a guy to watch for, though. DJ Moore is going to be a player that I think I'm going to be targeting early on, maybe a little bit earlier than other people.
That's a penalty.
Targeting?
Mm-hmm.
Or drafting out of order?
Both.
Also a penalty. maybe a shot, depending on the type of league you're in. Anyways,
I saw some people like taking wide receiver with the first pick, which is kind of smart, but
if you
risky.
get like DeAndre Hopkins, I would have loved.
I know someone that picked Antonio Brown first round, which makes sense.
Yeah, he was like the consensus first wide receiver.
He's kind of average this year, wasn't he? He didn't have
I mean, he's still really good, but I think you just expected a little bit more from him. I think if they did it all over again, they would have picked a guy like Saquon Barkley over Antonio Brown, because Brown was picked higher than Barkley in most drafts.
Well, because Barkley was a rookie. You don't know what's going to happen.
All right, so what do you say we go to a break?
Well, yes, but I don't want to read into a break too much. But speaking of reading and listening, audiobooks inspire us, motivates us, even brings us closer. There's no better place to listen than Audible. Get your first audiobook free along with 2 selected Audible original titles and exclusive fitness programs when you start a 30-day trial. So take the time to listen on Audible. Just visit audible.com/GSMC book or text the code GSMC book to 500500. Once again, if you want to do the 30-day trial, take the time to listen on Audible. Just visit audible.com/GSMC book or text the code GSMC book to 500500.
What happens to your decision-making when you drink? Well, after one drink, you feel confident. A few more, and calling your ex at 1 a.m. seems like a great idea. And you're pretty sure the secret to a great taco is 4-day-old macaroni. The bottom line, drunk you doesn't make great decisions. So you're risking a DUI or worse if you count on him to get you home. Plan before you party. Get home safe. Brought to you by
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I don't know why I'm using an accent I can't explain. We talked about our ups and downs of this season. We're basically doing fantasy and review. What do we got next on the agenda, Mark Souza?
We're going to talk about players who – we just talked about potential breakout candidates. We're going to go the opposite end of the spectrum here and talk about players who maybe we think their stock is trending down. Maybe they had a good year this year, but you're just not so high on – maybe picking them where you think they'll be picked next year in terms of maybe they're probably a first-round pick and you don't think that they are. You think they're more of a second or third-round pick and players like that. So players, I guess, that might be trending down in real life in terms of production that will affect the way you draft next season as of right now.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Yes, he's also on my list. Why would you say Ben? Tell the fine folks out there why you think that his numbers will decline.
He, first of all, is not a leader. He's
what? Not a leader.
He's not liked, is what I'm saying. And I'm saying that
does that matter though?
It matters to me, and I also think the fact that he's just getting older. He's getting more out of shape. He's not caring, and it's just going to lead to him just being extremely struggled. He's just going to struggle. And he's not going to do well.
Yeah, I am.
It's especially the out of shape part is important.
I am down on him, but it's. I just think it's more like it's his age. It's. I think his huge games are not as often, not as common as they were, and I think that his weekly floor, I think, is lowered, and his weekly ceiling is lowered. So with that being said, if you draft him like he was a couple years ago, Big Ben, I think you will be disappointed. And I think there's better options. I think there's better players, better quarterbacks to take stock in, at least drafting, with your first quarterback. So do you have another player? Or actually, I'll go because you just went.
Yeah.
I have Brady. Tom Brady, same kind of reason. He's getting older. I mean, he has been hardly a top 10 quarterback fantasy-wise this year. He's a better real-life quarterback than he is a fantasy quarterback because that offense and that team is not going to throw. He's not going to throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, too often. Maybe a couple times a season, but he's more of a 275 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns kind of quarterback, and he might be just continuing to go down a little bit. I mean, he's 41 years old. Like, what do we expect, right? Like, what do we expect? Like, he's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to be, even a guy like Drew Brees is going to put up bigger numbers. So I have Brady. Who's next? Who do you have next?
Let's go running backs. So Marlon Mack.
Okay, so you're not as high on Marlon Mack as maybe.
I was high on Marlon Mack at this season. He's played great, but honestly, I don't think it can last 2 seasons in a row.
Okay, so you think he'll be a player that, like, you'll draft him, but you won't, like, target him, right? Like, you'll hope that he falls to you rather than you're not going to draft him.
I'm not getting my
early.
hopes up, yes.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know how I feel about that, but I understand where you're coming from. He was kind of an unknown player, like a flash in the pan. Maybe he'll have a decent season and then fall off. How about Jordan Howard? I have him as a running back. He was overdrafted this year.
This season too.
It just seems like with that offense, that Tariq Cohen is the player that you want from that backfield because he catches the ball. He has a better chance to score when he gets the ball. Jordan Howard will always be a red zone threat to score the short yardage touchdowns, but you can't draft him to be your number 1. I don't even think you can draft him to be your number 2 running back,
Yeah.
All right, who's next for you?
You
You can say running back. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
I have one more running back, but you whatever. If you want to do tight end, receiver.
Well, honestly, he had a pretty fantastic season, but I don't see the same replication, and that's Adam Thielen.
I have him too.
You do too?
I do. Because he might get drafted as one of the top 2 or 3 receivers next year.
Oh, 100%.
But I would rather have Julio. I'd rather have Antonio, and I'd rather have DeAndre.
Okay.
Then I could see Thielen. But I don't know, man. He really fell off the last, 6 games or so?
Yeah, roughly.
What did he start off with? 7 games in a row with 100 yards?
And then, 30 yards. It was, one of those things where it's just
And that Vikings offense, maybe Kirk Cousins is not the quarterback that we expect, right? Maybe he's not the quarterback that we thought was going to, throw for 400 or, 4,500 yards in a season and 40 touchdown passes. Like, maybe he's not that guy because he wasn't that guy this year.
He is 5-25 in his career against winning record teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was 4 wins in our sports and football podcast, but apparently he got 1 win this year against a winning team.
Mm-hmm.
But he was 1-6 this year against winning teams.
Yeah,
that puts me at I can't rely on this guy if he doesn't get it done against teams with winning records.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and the takeaway here is, I think for the listeners, is that he doesn't perform. He's more of a matchup quarterback. Right, and
he needs to have a poor matchup.
And Adam Thielen can also fall into a matchup receiver if his quarterback is too matchup reliant. Because as we know as fantasy football fans, these guys that play receiver, they're tied to the quarterback. I mean, it takes a special receiver, a really special receiver, to put up numbers when the quarterback play isn't there, like DeAndre Hopkins did for a couple of years there in Houston. It takes a real special player.
Mm-hmm.
And also with Thielen, you got to talk about Diggs. Diggs might be the better receiver. I mean, he might be the best receiver on the team. I know that Thielen gets all the love and he gets more catches, but Diggs is the dynamic player of the two. He's the one he's the big play guy. So,
yeah.
All right. I got one.
What's up?
How about Mark Ingram? He's going to be a free agent this year.
Mark Ingram, free agent.
We don't know where
year.
he's going to go. We don't know if he's going to stay with the Saints. But if he doesn't stay with the Saints, there's a good chance that he goes to an offense that is not as dynamic as the Saints. So what if he goes somewhere, I don't know, to Jacksonville or somewhere with a less dynamic offense? He's a decent player. I like Mark Ingram, but I don't think he's like a great running back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that he benefits a lot from playing with the Saints.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes. But I still think he can rebound. I think he can do better. I think he can improve with
Do
a
you
new
think
team.
that if he played as the number one running back, let's say for the Raiders or the Jaguars or a team where he was the undisputed number one running back, that he would be a top 10, top 15 running back, fantasy-wise?
I could see it.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him be. He's still a good player.
He's somebody I'm just iffy on. Just a little iffy.
Just like you, but I can see him breaking out. Can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He still has a bunch of potential.
We all know in fantasy football, volume is king. So if he goes somewhere and he gets 20 carries a game, then he's going to be a top 10 running back. Like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Because David Johnson this year.
That's the way the cookie
You know that
crumbles.
David Johnson was a top 10 running back this year, and he had no
Shut
notable
up.
big game because of volume. Like, he gets the ball 25 times, and he has 100 yards, and you're like, man, he didn't do much. But,
That's actually really surprising.
All right. I have another receiver. Do you have another player before I jump into mine?
Go for it.
Mike Evans.
Yeah. He's on a decline already.
I just don't know about the Bucs offense next year. We don't know who their quarterback will be. We don't know who their head coach will be. Mike Evans is risky for me because he was okay this year. I thought he was fine, but I still don't think he was what some people thought he was going to be when they drafted him. And that was in an offense that threw the ball a lot. Like, that was in a very, very air-oriented offense, and he still didn't put up huge numbers. That worries me.
True.
That's all that I have for my stock. I actually have one more. Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah. I think his career's done.
Yeah. If he plays next year,
His career is probably
I don't
done.
think he should be drafted, to be honest with you. I hope he recovers. He's a very good player, but that Achilles injury plus he was already
and
on the
his
decline.
age.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, anything else, or should we go to a break?
We should go to a break.
All right.
And when we get back, we will finish up anything else we need to
Some
talk
injury news. We'll talk about some daily fantasy this weekend because I know that season long is over, but daily fantasy, FanDuel, DraftKings, and all that is still going on. We'll talk about the playoff matchups and see what players you might target there. Also, I will tell you who the 3 most common fantasy football players are that played in championship teams this year. We'll do that when we return.
about. Okay.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. No, seriously, welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We're on our final stretch here of the day before.
Why are you doing that?
Because we're on 20. This is the last 10 minutes of 2018, or last 5-10 minutes of 2018 for our viewers, for our podcast. That is.
I'm going to tell you who the 3 most common members of ESPN Fantasy Football Championship teams were.
Go.
Go ahead and throw one out there for me.
No, you go.
No, I know them, but do you want to guess?
No.
Who do you think the quarterback was on most championship fantasy
Patrick
teams?
Mahomes?
Yes. Now, who do you think the running back, the most likely running back on fantasy football championship teams was?
For week 16?
No, just for teams and season-long teams.
Got it. Ezekiel Elliott?
No.
Chris Carson?
No.
Philip Lindsay?
This person definitely finished in the top 5 in fantasy running back.
Saquon Barkley.
No.
Really? Alvin Kamara?
No.
Marlon Mack?
I'm surprised you haven't said Gurley, but he's not it either.
I wasn't thinking Gurley.
All right. Still no. You
Melvin
haven't
Gordon?
said his name. No. Damn.
Who am I missing? Wait, don't tell me.
Super consistent player, always putting up big numbers. A frequent member of our teams that we picked.
Oh, Kareem Hunt?
No. That was actually a good guess.
Who am I
Oh
missing?
my gosh.
I'm gonna
You
hit
are-
myself. Matt Breida?
No. You're going to hit yourself.
Okay, who? Okay, James Conner.
No.
Shoot. I said Barkley. I said Connor. Who am I missing? Don't tell me. I'm gonna get this. Best running backs. I said Ezekiel Elliott.
You did, and that wasn't right.
It's not Todd Gurley. It's not James Conner. It's not Kareem Hunt, obviously.
This guy caught a lot of passes as a running back.
Alvin Kamara?
Not Alvin Kamara.
Mark Ingram?
Not Mark Ingram.
Who
Oh my
on earth am I?
gosh.
Wait, he caught a lot. Oh my God, Christian McCaffrey.
Christian
Duh. Oh my gosh, I am gonna smack myself.
So
for
this
that.
other person, get this. The third player, because I told you three, right? You got Mahomes and Christian McCaffrey. The third player is also a running back. Also somebody you did not name.
Really?
Really.
God, who did I miss?
Somebody who you didn't start off thinking he was going to be awesome, but he ended up being very awesome.
I said James Conner.
You're right, but it wasn't him. That's a good guess.
Rashad Penny?
No.
Um,
Rashad Penny, he didn't even do it.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of any team names I haven't figured out yet.
A player that was jumped onto the scene, burst onto the scene.
Jumped onto
Not right away. It took him some games, but once he got his chance, he ran with it. Pun intended.
AFC or NFC?
AFC.
Okay. Oh, Sonny Michel.
No.
But
But you're close.
is he James White?
No.
Like LaShawn McCoy?
No.
Is he AFC East? Is that why you
No.
said I'm close? Oh.
No. You'll understand why I said you're close after you get it right.
New England.
But Sony Michel was
Close?
a close guess because of two big reasons.
Oh, Nick Chubb.
Yes.
Got it.
And the other reason the two reasons are
AFC
they went to the same school
and Georgia.
and they were both rookies. So, yeah, Nick Chubb. Those are your three players that were on the most
Those are the top
championship
three?
winning teams season long in
Wow.
season long fantasy. Yeah, it makes sense, right? Nick Chubb was a great free agent
Nick
pickup.
Chubb, yeah.
One of the best, maybe
He was
the best.
probably even a late draft pick.
Yeah, some people did draft him. I know some people drafted him and then dropped him because he wasn't playing. But if you held on to him, you were rewarded big time. Anyways, daily fantasy. So this weekend we have some games. Wild card, daily fantasy. We have, and that's what we're going to do on Friday. Friday we're going to break down who you should play, who we think you should play. We got the Cowboys against Seattle. We have the Bears against Philadelphia. That's going to be a good game. We have, who else we got? Texans and Colts. Fun little AFC South matchup there. Third game of the season between those two. Which is
What
nice.
are the odds?
Which is nice because that gives us some insight to how these teams will play each other because they've played each other twice. For fantasy football wise, it gives us more information. Maybe we can use that to our advantage, and we will on Friday. But also, who's the other game in the AFC? The Ravens and the Chargers. Injury news there. Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon was hurt late in the Chargers game.
You want to hear something interesting, though, that I just found out?
Go ahead.
The 6 most expensive quarterbacks, or most paid quarterbacks, none of them made the playoffs.
That is correct.
You got the same thing, too, didn't you?
I saw that earlier today, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that's incredible because those 6 guys, I hate to interrupt the playoff part, but those 6 guys were major pickups in draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan.
Maybe not Derek Carr in terms of picked in fantasy football.
Yeah, true. But I would say, like,
But
Matt
yeah.
Stafford and
Ryan had a
Cousins.
good year. Matt Ryan definitely had the
Jimmy
best
Garoppolo
year.
was definitely up there, too, before he got injured.
Yeah, but of this year, Matt Ryan performed. The other ones didn't
Yeah,
for
all right.
one reason or another.
Go back to your playoffs.
You know, I was just saying, this Friday we'll forecast. We'll do our picks too for our weekly game, but we'll tell you who you should pick up for your daily fantasy fix. DraftKings, FanDuel. We'll break down the quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, running backs, flex, wide receivers, all of them, tight ends, defense, kickers.
Cheerleaders,
there's no kickers,
mascots, fans.
I did not do well in DraftKings this last weekend. I will fully admit that. But, hey, that's the thing about daily. It changes every time.
You can never trust daily. My brother lost by like 0.5 points, and he lost out $10,000.
That
0.5 points.
sucks.
It does suck.
But we will give you our picks and tell you who you should pick up.
Yes.
And, of course, we'll do that with the amount their dollar amounts in mind, so you can actually pick a lineup from it. So,
and thank you so much for joining us today. I think that's everything.
That's it.
Yes, and tune us in, like you said, on Friday for all that. But tune us in also tomorrow on New Year's Day, the first show of 2019, and we will see you next year. Huh? Get it? I hate that, by the way. See you on January 1st, 2019, everybody.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.